Does anybody else just get so weary of everything that's going on? It's like every time I turn on the news, one side saying this, one side saying that. I got to look information up on both sides to know what to believe. And it's exhausting. We got a critical point in our history here that, this nation needs to make the right decision. And I'm really afraid that people aren't going to make the right decision because there's a lack of truth out there. What truth that there is just all buried out there in the news and in the internet. It's hard to get good information. Everybody's basing their things off of a feeling or, a hope that something has a good idea, but there's no implementation of that idea. And then I ran across this. I had seen it, a couple days ago when it happened. I didn't put much thought into it. There was a couple things that caught my attention, but with everything else going on, I was just like, I ain't gonna mess with it. Well, then I'm of course just going through stuff tonight, and there it is again. It just keeps popping up. And I really got looking through it and kind of digesting it a little bit to see, is this something that should I really even be considered with? Because I got enough going on my plate now. But no, I look at this, and I read through it 3 or 4 times, and I think, it's like, you gotta be kidding me. And then I think about the people that are there that are all cheering on after this stuff was said, and I just don't know if they're biblically ignorant or if they're on like this emotional rush. That people get caught up in this all the time. You see it in church all the time. The invitation comes, some real good music's playing, and come to the altar. And what happens? People come to the altar. And it just is this emotional response. But I got reading this, and it really kind of, no, it's disheartening. So I'm going to kind of go through what happened here and get your guys' take on it because I think it is kind of important. So this happened a couple of days ago, and this is when Vice President Harris was at that New Birth Mission Baptist Church out in Georgia. And the short of it is that he, in his message, he preached on Esther. And Esther is a really interesting book. If you've not read it for a while or you're just unfamiliar with it, it's just kind of a book about God's providence and how he puts people in the right place to be called upon at the right time. And he preaches on this, and then he says some key words that link it right back to Esther and is equating Vice President Harris as Esther. In one part, he was talking about the black community and how you should stand up as a black man and support the sister, and that you need to follow somebody that is anointed. Now, anointed would be the last thing I would call a presidential candidate, especially when you're equating it to the biblical side of things. I don't believe God anointed her. Um, maybe not, but I don't see it. But he starts tying this into Esther, and I want to look down here so I can read this because I just want to get the wording right because he was already talking about who was not intimidated by women who are anointed to lead. He's talking about women who are anointed to lead. And he was equating this with Harris here, that he was calling on the black community, which people ought to really watch Candace Owens and what she has been doing about is Kamala Harris black? And she has done a super deep dive into her genealogy, and it's very eye-opening about what type of race that she really is. So if you've not watched that, I will link that in the description to her page, and it may just be to the first episode, and I may just put the last one because she came out tonight actually and had a video that was even more updated because she got in touch with another family member that isn't being talked about in her book, but that particular family member kept all these detailed genealogies. So boy, it really, a lot of stuff came together. And, of course, mainstream media isn't reporting on it, but it's something that people need to be aware of. Part of this is as a previous video that I released here that said, I was talking about whether or not, talking about character. And there's a lot that goes in with her race there. But if a person is willing to disguise or masquerade or hide, the true origins of yourself, that's just another red flag that you need to look at when you're talking about somebody's character. But I really recommend looking at her videos, and they're quite long, and she's been on this for some weeks now, and they're very detailed. I really recommend you guys looking at those. But back to this here, he was the pastor there. He was like, women who are anointed to lead. And then he goes on and says, I want to pull this up here. The quote was, and I'm going to read this for you. It says, "Who knew that 60 years ago today, you were born to be president? You were born to lead a nation. You were born to change the trajectory of democracy. Who knows? But you were born for such a time as this." Now, if you know scripture, when he gets talking about, but you were born for such a time as this, that's in Esther. And there's no coincidence that he was preaching from Esther and that he came back in this and he tied it to Esther. He's somewhat trying to link it from a Christian side of view, but it's another example of manipulation, and I hate being manipulated. Absolutely hate it. I hate going on the TV and watching commercials, and there's a half-naked woman there, and, she's trying to sell me a loaf of bread. I hate that. These people pry, especially for men as myself, commercials and stuff, they prey on our weakness, and I really hate that. But anyway, when you've got, and this is a mega church, and this pastor, it has a huge influence of these people, and I don't know. It's so disheartening that people in charge manipulate the people that are either not in the know, or the people are just maybe uneducated and haven't had the time to research some of this stuff. But anyway, I was reading this article, and I wanted to get that out there so people could see some of this manipulation out there. And she never countered this, obviously. I mean, she's not going to stand up and say, "Whoa, I'm not anointed here. I'm," but because she's got an agenda too. Just same thing. Trump at McDonald's. I talked about that earlier too. Yeah, he went there for a purpose. Same thing with this. But as a pastor, if you go back and watch that, he's really pushing his congregation and those that haven't voted to vote for Kamala. And he's got a lot of influence with these people. And everything that he says, they're only going to hear, they're going to hear the message of Esther. They're going to hear Anointed, and they're going to hear that you were born for such a time as this. They're going to hear those and immediately think that that's the truth and that we need to go out and vote for her. They're not going to take in anything else but that emotional rush. And that's so dangerous in this society right now. I'm trying to get this information out to people. So, when I run across from stuff like that, it opens the eyes to what the media does, the manipulation that's out there. And, we really got to put our trust in the worldly sense, not of Jesus Christ, but in the world, our trust in the people that have good character, integrity, and that are going to preach scripture. And it's just hard. But when you see examples of this, and this is a pastor in a mega church, and there's tons of big churches out there that they do this kind of stuff. They manipulate their congregations for money. They do all of this stuff, and it gets them a crawl, I guess. So anyway, I got this tonight, and I just wanted to get this out there so people can actually see this. We've got an election coming up, and the more information that can get pushed out to people, it's the better to be educated to make an educated decision on who they vote for this, presidential election. Yeah, I'll go through the little spiel. If you haven't liked the video, please do. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. Share it to all your friends. We're out there trying to get the gospel message to people, and we're trying to get people to recognize their sin, and we're trying to build each other up in love. And the only way we're going to do that is if us Christians just we make a decision that this is something that we want to do, and we're going to stand on the truth. So if you can share these videos, I'd appreciate it. It really helps the channel out.